Imagine reaching the final years of your life, looking back on everything you accomplished and realizing your greatest regret wasn't failure. It was never finding out what you were truly capable of. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid failure. It seems like the responsible thing to do. Play it safe. Don't take unnecessary risks. Stay where life feels predictable. On the surface, it sounds wise, but there is another risk that almost nobody talks about. The risk of becoming average. Not because you lacked talent, not because you lacked intelligence, but because you slowly accepted a life that demanded less from you than you were capable of giving. Average doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't arrive with a dramatic decision. It arrives through small choices. The opportunity you decided to postpone, the challenge you quietly avoided, the dream you convinced yourself could wait until someday. Each decision seems harmless. Each excuse sounds reasonable. But over time, those moments begin to shape your identity. Until one day, you stop asking, "What could my life become?" and start asking, "Isn't this enough?" There is nothing wrong with living a simple life. This documentary is not about becoming famous. It is about something far more important. It is about refusing to abandon your own potential. Because average is not a number. It is not a salary. It is not a job title. Average is a mindset. It is the quiet decision to stop growing while there is still more within you to discover. The truth is, the greatest price of being average is not paid today. It is paid years from now. When you realize that comfort quietly replaced courage. Routine quietly replaced curiosity. The saddest part is that most people never notice it happening, and wondering what might have happened if they had trusted themselves just a little more. This documentary is an invitation to ask a difficult question. Not whether you are successful, not whether you are wealthy, but whether the life you are building is truly the one you are capable of living. Because the cost of chasing an extraordinary life may be temporary discomfort, but the cost of never trying may last forever. Average feels safe. There is something deeply comforting about blending in, doing what everyone else is doing, following the expected path, choosing the option that attracts the least resistance. It feels responsible. It feels sensible. Most importantly, it feels safe from childhood. Many of us are taught to avoid mistakes, choose the secure path. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't stand out too much. Without realizing it, we begin to associate safety with success. But safety and growth are not always the same thing. The life that feels safest today may quietly become the life you regret tomorrow. Not because it was wrong. We like knowing what tomorrow will look like. We enjoy routines, predictable outcomes, familiar places. There is nothing wrong with that. Routine can create stability. Stability can create peace. But when certainty becomes more important than possibility, something begins to change. We stop asking, "What could I become?" and start asking, "What is the least risky option?" That question quietly reshapes an entire life. Many people never abandon their dreams in a single moment. They simply make one safe decision after another until years later they realize they have become experts at protecting themselves, but strangers to their own potential. This is why average is so deceptive. It doesn't feel like giving up. It feels like being practical. The opportunity seems too uncertain. The promotion can wait. The business idea needs a little more planning. The difficult conversation isn't the right move today. Each decision makes sense on its own. But life is not shaped by one decision. It is shaped by patterns. And patterns have consequences. Imagine standing at a crossroads every single day. One path feels familiar, the other demands courage. Most days, the familiar path wins, not because it is better, but because it asks less from you. Weeks become months, months become years. Eventually, the familiar road no longer feels like a choice. It feels like your identity, yet history tells a different story. The people who changed their own lives rarely waited until every uncertainty disappeared. They accepted that clarity often comes after commitment, not before it. They understood that certainty is comforting, but growth is rarely certain. Perhaps that is the hidden price of always choosing what feels safe. You don't only avoid risk, you also avoid the possibility of discovering who you might have become. Because the greatest opportunities in life rarely arrive with guarantees. They arrive with uncertainty. And they quietly ask a question. Will you stay where you are? Or will you become someone you've never been? That question has separated ordinary lives from extraordinary ones for generations. Not because extraordinary people were fearless, but because they refused to let the need for certainty become the limit of their future. And once you understand that, you begin to notice something even more important. A remarkable life is almost never shaped by one dramatic decision. It is shaped by hundreds of small choices that seem insignificant in the moment. The hidden cost of small choices. No one wakes up one morning and decides to live an average life. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, one decision at a time, one excuse at a time, one comfortable choice, repeated often enough that it no longer feels like a choice. That is how ordinary lives are built. Not through dramatic failures, but through small compromises that slowly become habits. Imagine a ship leaving its harbor. If its course changes by only a single degree, the difference is almost impossible to notice. 4 hours. It appears to be heading toward the same destination, but over hundreds of miles. That tiny adjustment carries it somewhere entirely different. Human lives work much the same way. One missed workout will not change your future. One day of procrastination will not destroy your dreams. One difficult conversation avoided will not ruin a relationship, but repeated often enough. Those small decisions begin to point your life in a different direction. This is why success and failure rarely arrive as dramatic events. They are usually the result of patterns. Patterns built through ordinary days. Consider the person who decides to read 10 pages every evening. 10 pages seem insignificant, but after a year, they have read thousands of pages. They have learned ideas that slowly reshape how they think. Now imagine another person. Every evening, they tell themselves, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. Neither person notices much difference after a single day, but time quietly magnifies every repeated choice. This is the hidden power of consistency. The life you live tomorrow is often created by the habits you repeat today. Not because each habit is extraordinary, but because they compound. The danger is that negative habits compound as well. A little less effort, a little more comfort, a little less curiosity, a few more excuses. None of these seem important on their own. Yet together, they slowly lower your expectations of yourself. Perhaps that is the greatest tragedy. Not that people fail, but that they gradually stop expecting more from their own lives. The person you become is rarely shaped by a single breakthrough. You become what you repeatedly practice. If you practice discipline, discipline becomes familiar. If you practice avoidance, avoidance becomes familiar. Every repeated action is casting a vote for the person you are becoming. That is why greatness is rarely an accident. It is the quiet result of choosing the better path. Even when no one is watching, even when the reward is invisible, even when the easier option is only one decision away. The remarkable thing is that this truth works both ways. Just as small compromises can slowly build an average life, small acts of courage can slowly build an extraordinary one. One book, one conversation, 1 hour of focused work, one promise kept to yourself. Those moments seem insignificant until years later, when you realize they quietly changed everything. Perhaps the future is not decided by the biggest moments of your life. Perhaps it is decided by the smallest ones, because the direction of a life is rarely determined in a single day. It is determined by the choices we repeat when we believe nobody is paying attention. And once you begin to see that, you start to understand why one emotion has prevented more dreams than almost any other. not failure, not lack of talent, but fear. A fear so convincing that it often disguises itself as common sense. Fear wears the mask of logic. Fear is rarely dramatic. It doesn't usually shout, it whispers. It speaks in calm, reasonable sentences. Wait until the timing is better. You should prepare a little more. What if this isn't the right opportunity? At first, those thoughts sound wise, responsible, even. After all, planning is important. Preparation matters. Patience has its place, but there is a subtle difference between preparation and procrastination disguised as wisdom. Fear understands that if it simply told you to give up, you would probably ignore it. So it chooses a more convincing strategy. It tells you to wait just a little longer, until you feel more confident, until you know more, until every uncertainty disappears. The problem is that life rarely offers that moment. No one feels completely ready for the opportunities that change their life. The entrepreneur who starts the business, the student who applies for the scholarship, the artist who shares their work, the person who finally speaks the truth. None of them begin with certainty. They begin with a decision. Action creates clarity far more often than waiting does. Yet fear wants us to believe the opposite. It wants us to believe that clarity must come first. So we postpone. Not because we don't care, but because we convince ourselves we're being sensible. Days become months. Months become years. Eventually, the opportunity is gone. And we tell ourselves it just wasn't meant to be. But perhaps it wasn't fate that closed the door. Perhaps it was hesitation. One of the greatest illusions in life is believing that there will always be another perfect time. There may be another opportunity, but it will never be this moment. Time has a quiet way of moving forward without asking whether we feel ready. While we wait for certainty, life continues. Others keep learning, keep growing, keep taking imperfect action. Not because they are fearless, but because they understand something important. Progress belongs to those who are willing to begin before they feel prepared. Think back to the moments that changed your own life. Were you completely confident, or did you simply decide that remaining where you were had become more painful than moving forward? That is often how transformation begins. Not with perfect confidence, but with a choice. A choice to stop negotiating with fear, to stop asking whether success is guaranteed, and instead ask a different question. What kind of person do I become if I never try? That question changes everything, because failure can teach you. Failure can redirect you. Failure can strengthen you. But the opportunities you never pursued can teach you nothing. They leave only imagination, a lifetime of wondering what might have been. Perhaps that is the greatest victory fear ever achieves. Not convincing people they cannot succeed, but convincing them to postpone the attempt until the chance quietly disappears. And once that pattern takes hold, something else begins to shape our lives. Not just fear, but the quiet influence of everyone around us. The comfort of staying where the crowd already is. The comfort of the crowd. Human beings have always needed one another, long before cities, before nations, before modern civilization. Survival depended on belonging to a group. To be accepted meant protection. To be rejected often meant danger. For thousands of years, this instinct helped our ancestors survive. Even today, that desire has never truly disappeared. We still want acceptance. We still seek approval. We still feel uncomfortable when we stand apart from everyone else. There is nothing wrong with that. Connection is one of life's greatest needs. But there is a hidden danger. Sometimes we begin making decisions based on what will be accepted instead of what is truly right for us. We choose careers because they are expected. We silence ideas because they might be criticized. We abandon dreams because no one around us believes they are realistic. Little by little, our lives become shaped by other people's expectations. The crowd offers something incredibly attractive: certainty. If everyone is walking in one direction, it feels safer to follow. After all, if everyone else is doing it, it must be the correct path. But history tells a different story. Every meaningful breakthrough began with someone willing to think differently. Every great invention, every revolutionary idea, every extraordinary achievement. At one point, they all looked unusual. Some even looked foolish. The crowd rarely recognizes a new path while it is being created. It usually understands its value only after someone has already walked it. This is why approval can become a dangerous compass. If your greatest goal is to avoid criticism, you will eventually avoid originality. If your greatest goal is to fit in, you may never discover what makes you unique. Perhaps that is why so many people spend years living according to invisible expectations. Not because they consciously chose that life, but because they never stopped to ask whose expectations they were trying to satisfy. There is a quiet freedom that comes from asking yourself one simple question: if no one else's opinion mattered, what would I choose? The answer may surprise you, because beneath the desire to belong, there is often another life waiting. One built on your own values, your own purpose, your own definition of success. Choosing that path is rarely comfortable. There will always be people who misunderstand you, people who doubt you, people who prefer the version of you that never changes. But growth has never depended on universal approval. It has always depended on the courage to remain true to what matters most. The goal is not to reject the crowd. The goal is to ensure that the crowd never becomes the author of your life. Because the moment you allow other people's expectations to define your future, you quietly surrender the responsibility of defining it yourself. And perhaps that is one of the highest prices of being average. Not living the life you truly wanted, but living the life everyone else expected. The remarkable thing is that escaping this pattern doesn't require a dramatic revolution. It begins with something much smaller. One decision, one habit, one promise kept to yourself. Because extraordinary lives are not built through one extraordinary moment. They are built through ordinary actions repeated with extraordinary consistency. Excellence is built quietly. When we look at extraordinary people, we usually see the outcome, the successful business, the remarkable achievement, the years of mastery. The moment the world finally notices them, what we rarely see are the ordinary days that came before it. The mornings when no one was watching, the evenings spent learning instead of relaxing, the repeated failures that never made the headlines. Excellence has a habit of hiding its work. It grows quietly, one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one day at a time. That is why it often looks effortless from the outside. People see years of preparation and call it talent. They see discipline and call it luck. They see consistency and call it natural ability. But extraordinary lives are rarely built by extraordinary moments alone. They are built by ordinary actions, repeated with uncommon commitment. Think about a stone sculptor. Every strike of the hammer seems insignificant. One strike changes almost nothing. 10 strikes still reveal very little. Even 100 strikes may appear to accomplish almost nothing. But eventually, the stone breaks. To the person watching, it looks like the final strike made the difference. In reality, every strike mattered. Life works much the same way. Every book you finish, every promise you keep, every difficult task you complete, every hour spent improving a skill, they all seem small, but they are shaping someone you cannot yet see. This is where many people give up. They expect immediate results. When those results don't appear, they assume their efforts aren't working. But growth often happens beneath the surface, long before it becomes visible. A tree spends years strengthening its roots before its full height can be seen. Character grows the same way. The strongest foundations are usually invisible. That is why discipline matters so much. Discipline allows you to continue when progress is too small to notice. It teaches you to trust the process. even when the reward hasn't arrived. Perhaps that is the greatest difference between average and excellence. Average asks, "What do I get today?" Excellence asks, "Who am I becoming through today's effort?" That single question changes everything. Because once your focus shifts from immediate rewards to long-term growth, consistency becomes easier. You stop chasing quick victories. You begin building lasting habits. And lasting habits have a remarkable way of creating lasting results. The people we admire are rarely those who made one brilliant decision. They are the ones who made good decisions repeatedly, especially on the days when motivation disappeared. That is the quiet secret behind excellence. It is not dramatic. It is not glamorous. It is often repetitive. But repetition is where mastery is born. Perhaps that is why extraordinary lives appear so ordinary. While they are being lived, the difference is not found in one unforgettable day. It is found in thousands of ordinary days used well. And when those days are added together, the result can look extraordinary. Which brings us to the final lesson of this documentary. If average is built through repeated compromise, and excellence is built through repeated discipline, then the future is not something we discover. It is something we quietly create, one decision at a time. The courage to live above average. There comes a moment in every life when a choice quietly presents itself. Not between success and failure, not between wealth and poverty, but between comfort and possibility. It is a choice that rarely looks dramatic. It appears in ordinary moments. The decision to learn one more skill, to speak when silence feels easier, to take responsibility instead of making excuses, to begin before you feel completely ready. These moments may seem insignificant, yet they slowly determine the direction of a life. Many people spend years trying to become extraordinary, but perhaps that is the wrong goal. The goal is not to impress the world. The goal is to become fully responsible for the potential that already exists within you. There is a profound difference. One seeks applause, the other seeks growth. One depends on comparison, the other depends on commitment. The truth is, someone will always have more than you. More money, more recognition, more experience. If your definition of success depends on comparison, you will never reach the finish line. There will always be someone further ahead. But if your definition of success is becoming a little wiser, a little stronger, a little more disciplined than you were yesterday, then every day offers the chance to succeed. This is why living above average has very little to do with talent. It has everything to do with intention. It is choosing your values before your emotions, your purpose before your comfort, your long-term future before today's convenience. That choice will not always be easy. Some people will misunderstand you. Others may question why you're changing. There may even be moments when you question yourself. That is part of growth. Every meaningful transformation creates distance between who you were and who you are becoming. Do not mistake that discomfort for failure. It is often evidence that change is taking place. Remember, no one is born disciplined. No one is born courageous. These qualities are built. One promise kept, one difficult decision made, one excuse refused. Over time, those small victories create a person who trusts themselves. And self-trust is one of the rarest forms of confidence. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be bought. It is earned through action. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from today. What would that future version thank you for? Not the days you chose what was easiest, but the days you chose what was necessary. The days you kept going when no one was watching. The days you stayed true to your values when compromise would have been simpler. Those are the days that quietly shape a remarkable life. Perhaps living above average has never meant becoming better than other people. Perhaps it simply means refusing to betray your own potential, refusing to let fear make your decisions, refusing to let comfort write your story, refusing to accept a life that is smaller than the one you are capable of creating. Because, in the end, the greatest measure of success is not whether the world remembers your name, It is whether you had the courage to become the person you were capable of becoming. And if you can honestly answer yes to that question, then you have already achieved something far greater than an average life. Every life tells a story, not only through the achievements we celebrate, but through the choices we make when no one is watching. Throughout this documentary, we have explored a simple but uncomfortable truth. The price of being average is rarely paid in a single moment. It is paid slowly, the dreams we quietly convince ourselves to postpone. Most people never decide to settle. They simply stop asking more of themselves, little by little, year after year, until the life they once imagined becomes a distant memory. But it doesn't have to end that way, because every day offers another opportunity to choose differently. One decision, one habit, one act of courage. That is how remarkable lives are built, not through one extraordinary breakthrough, but through ordinary moments used wisely. It is not reserved for the lucky. It is not reserved for the fearless. It is not reserved for those born with extraordinary talent. More often than not, it belongs to those who continue moving forward after everyone else has become comfortable standing still. There will always be reasons to wait, reasons to doubt yourself, reasons to choose what feels familiar. Those reasons will never disappear. The question is whether you will allow them to decide the direction of your life, because time has a quiet way of rewarding action and exposing hesitation years from now. You will not remember every difficult day. You will not remember every obstacle you overcame, but you will remember whether you had the courage to become the person you knew you could be. That is the decision that matters. Not whether your life looked impressive to strangers, but whether it felt honest to you. Whether your choices reflected your values or your fears. Whether you built a life intentionally or simply accepted the one that required the least resistance. In the end, the opposite of being average is not perfection. It is intention. It is choosing growth over comfort, purpose over convenience, courage over certainty, again and again, until those choices become the story of your life. So before you ask whether your goals are too ambitious, ask something far more important. Are you becoming the person your future self will be grateful for? Because the greatest price of being average is not the money you fail to earn or the recognition you never receive. It is the version of yourself that never had the chance to exist. Don't let fear decide your future. Don't let comfort define your limits. And don't let the expectations of others become the boundaries of your own life. Live with intention. Keep growing. Keep learning. Keep becoming, because a remarkable life is not created in a single moment. It is created one courageous decision at a time.